Hi, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and I'm going to be doing a video which is a one-shot recap for a one-shot I ran for a couple of my buddies, which was entitled Giantland. This was using the Pathfinder rule set. It's a level 10 adventure with the conceit that all the player characters had to be small sized. So you could be a hobbit, a gnome, a kobold, a goblin, or a gripply, anything you can find that's small. It's a conceit to our character creation. And our players were Aaron Kenderson Scott, the Eternal Kender, who actually played a goblin. Perhaps an eighth Kender goblin. I think there was some Kender in there somewhere. There always has to be with Aaron. Our other players, we had James Randall Tutalik Mikatuk Duffy, good friend from Selleck Island, way up north in Nunavut province. I believe he was playing Hobbit. And Joshua Powers Pullman, the MVP of the Kitchener RPG scene. And I believe he was also playing a Hobbit. They might have been gnomes as well. The gnomes and hobbits are virtually identical to me. I think one of them was a gnome. We'll find out which one. But we began our adventure, this one-shot session. All of our players gathered together in a small hobbit village on the, which is built kind of on a plateau, a precipice of the Black Mountains. This was again in our Legends of the Seven Sands setting, but on the other side of the Black Mountains. So it was not a desert, it was very temperate, very nice area. Very much a medieval fantasy style area. So they're in a hobbit village on the side of the Black Mountains on a plateau, and they learned that Elven Princess is coming through from Teladrisil on her way through to the Dwarf Home Mountain, which is the center of all Dwarven culture and civilization. So the Elven Princess was there. She was staying at the best inn in the town. Our heroes were not. Our heroes were staying at a lower class kind of tavern. I think I'm trying to think. I think James was a Hobbit outrider, a knight riding a Saint Bernard. As befits the size of a Hobbit, he's riding around on Saint Bernard. And Josh then must have been a gnome. He had some spellcasting ability. Aaron, of course, as I said, the goblin. I believe he is a cleric of Magoubliet or some other horrible deity of destruction. His domains were like the Madness domain, which will come into play later, and maybe Trickery was his other domain, befitting a Kender, such as Aaron must play for some reason all the time. So they're staying at the inn. It's another dark and stormy night, as one-shots need to be on a dark and stormy night for some reason. But the rain is pouring down profusely, and it's leaking through the ceiling of the shitty tavern that they're in. They're drinking and talking to some patrons, some of the local hobbits. They're hearing the thunder off in the distance and the lightning. So I got the perception checks from them, and Josh was not as interested in drinking as he isn't even in real life. He's not interested in drinking. So, one shot, same thing. So, James and Aaron are drinking at the bar. Josh is kind of gazing, stargazing. He's looking out the window at the storm pouring down. He's got a beautiful view of the Black Woods beneath them. It's a panoramic view. Whenever the lightning flashes, he can see it. But he can see something else, too, whenever the lightning flashes. Off in the distance, a cloud. It looks like a strange cloud, shaped like a house almost in the sky, and he's gazing. He's just kind of watching it. and he's watching it. It's drawing closer and closer, and it's like it's heading directly towards the village. You know, he starts to think, and he realizes it's coming against the wind towards them. And as it gets closer, realizes it's not just a house; it's a keep, it's a castle, a palace in the sky on the back of a thundercloud. You know, so he turns to gesture to someone to come and look at this. Does anyone else see this? And of course, by the time they've come to the window, you know, it's gone. They don't see anything. They think he's just messing with them. You know, perhaps he saw a thunderbird, you know, or some other aberration, a thunder beast from Monster Manual 3, like the only good monster in that monster manual. But they go back to drinking. You know, he's wondering what it is. The thunder is crashing around them every so often. And they hear another one of these thunder crashes, you know, another perception check. This time I think everyone noticed it wasn't just a thunder crash. It was like almost like the sound of a landslide, wood cracking as well, and stone grinding. You know, they heard screams start in the village. You know, they flung the doors to the inn open. They could see down the street across the square an enormous boulder has crushed one of the hobbit houses, just crushed it, and it's just kind of sitting there rocking in the rain. They wander out, you know, the rain pouring over them. I say, what is this? Like, these boulders fell out of the sky, like it couldn't have rolled down. And as they get closer, you start to see it's not made of stone. It's actually all made of like gnarled wood, like tree roots all grown together. Some kind of enormous pod. As they realize this, it splits open. There's this huge sound of cracking wood again, and it splits open. It's just the size of a hobbit house, and inside there are almost tentacle-like vines that start to spread out, constricting and growing, crushing anything in its path, and they grow out. And as they're growing out on the ground, they also start to shoot straight up as well into the clouds above. You know, and this happens very, very quickly. Everyone's shocked. They're almost paralyzed. What's going on? And just a little while after the vine shoots up into the cloud, figures slide down them on rope slings they have slung over the vine. And it's giants descending from the sky. They've used their beanstalks offensively this time. So the giants come crashing down, and they start wailing on the hobbits with the giant-sized maces, you know, crushing in the sides of hobbit houses, and just causing a general ruckus. You know, the players at first we're in shock, but as soon as these giants arrived on the scene, they know it's time to get down to business and roll some initiative. And they start engaging the giants. You know, Aaron, I think, sort of buffing the party, calling on the power of Magoubliette to aid them. You know, Josh was blasting them with some minor magics that he had. James didn't have his mount with him, but he took up his spear, and he started spearing into the giants. You know, so we got a gnome, a goblin, and a hobbit versus these enormous, you know, 12-foot tall giants that look 24 feet tall to these hobbits. You know, the hobbits only come up to their knees. But before too long, the cavalry arrives, literally, as a platoon, a squadron of hobbit knights on dire corbies, on St. Bernards, on greyhounds, come charging in with their lances and assisting the party. Now everything seems, you know, it's almost under control, perhaps. You know, the giants were very dangerous, but now there's so much backup. The battle seems even, but not when your ally is Aaron Kenderson Scott. Aaron activates his aura of madness, driving everyone within 60 feet completely mad. They just start, and since they're already in combat, it's not like they're just standing around confused now. They start attacking at random. They're attacking, the mounts turn on their riders. The St. Bernards are eating the hobbits. The hobbits turn on their mounts. They start fighting each other. The giants, 2 of them, start slugging each other in the face with their maces. And Aaron is sitting there giggling like a cleric of madness should be doing. Excellent role playing from that, Aaron. I mean, I know you play the same character all the time, but good job on that one. You really had me believing that you were completely insane. So they eventually the giants die. The 2 of them kill each other, and then the other one was brought down before that, I believe, when the hobbits charged him. And so Aaron finally turns off his aura of madness. He manages to blame, they managed to blame all that on the giants. Somehow they said they were Fomorians from because Fomorians generate madness. They rolled some good diplomacy to get out of it. But so that was the night. Everyone collapses into bed at the inn. The next day, the mayor of this hobbit town, which I'm struggling not to call Hobbiton, but the mayor of this hobbit town comes to them. He's got his top hat on and he's got his sideburns, his Harley race task sideburns. Comes to them and he says that there was more than just the 1 seed pod that came down. There were 3 that came down in the village, and they didn't notice it because they failed their perception checks. Because it was storming and dark, and they were in the middle of combat. But lo and behold, the giants had made off with the elven princess. They dragged her back up the beanstalk, and then their sky castle drifted away on the wind. So the princess has been kidnapped from Hobbiton, which I had a better name at the time. This was several months ago I ran this game. But for the purposes of this video, why not call it Hobbiton? So the mayor, he begs, he pleads, he enlists their aid to rescue the princess. And it just so happens that Hobbiton is also a skyport. There's a dock hanging off the side over the cliff. And there is a gnome airman, a skyship captain who is there. And he agrees to aid the party in exchange for a gratuitous reward, a ridiculous reward. He will help the party rescue the princess. So they get on board the skyship. They take off into the great blue yonder. They are able to track the skyship somehow, which sounds silly if you're a ranger, but it was actually Josh using some etheric attunement, tracking the magical signature of the float stone, the cavorite, or obsidiasium, as gnomes call it, obsidiasium, of the sky giant's flying island. So they manage to track it down. They come down above the giantish sky island, and they see that it's much more massive than they thought. Josh could only see the castle the night before, but it's actually got a little forest, a kingswood, and there's some farms and a whole little town. Well, not little, I mean a giant-sized town, but not that many giants live there. So they're coming in. As they're coming in from the air, they realize, everything is giant here. The trees are giant. The livestock is giant. They can see it from the air. And just as they're noticing this, they find out the eagles are also giant. As a giant eagle swoops in and decides that the skyship looks delicious. And he starts, I believe he grabbed his claws onto the railing, and he starts pecking at the balloon. He bursts the central balloon, revealing that there are, I think there are 4 or 5 smaller secondary balloons inside of that one, because gnomes aren't dumb enough to make a single point of failure into their devices. At least these gnomes aren't, not the sky gnomes, because they'd be dead if they did that. Really dead all the time. So the party engages with this giant eagle. You know, the ship is tipping, tilting, lilting, and listing back and forth, and threatening to throw them off at any moment. They're making balance checks. They're fighting this eagle. Eventually, they drove the eagle off. I think they still had 2 or 3 balloons left, but the ship is sinking. It is falling out of the sky slowly, but it's not stoppable. They couldn't possibly drop enough ballast to stay in the air. So they come into a crash in the Kingswood, in the giant-sized forest canopy. You know, their skyship crashes into it, and I believe they did come to rest in the canopy, and they had to climb down onto the forest floor. You know, and they realized that you know, they're only about I think they were only about a foot tall compared to the terrain. You know, so the grass is like coming up to their waists. I believe that a giant badger took some interest in Aaron, which is only fitting, for Aaron is a kender, and kenders and badgers are, you know, the same thing. But the party ran afoul of a badger. I believe they were trying to use its burrow for shelter, and the badger came out. It was not happy to find anything in its burrow but itself. So they started fighting this badger. The badger actually chomped down on James's hand during the battle. It grappled him, used his bite attack, and it bit off several of his fingers. During the battle, they did manage to take out the badger, though, and James recovered his fingers. And he went to Aaron. You know, Aaron's a cleric, allegedly a cleric of madness. And, you know, he says, you know, can the power of Magoubliet reattach my fingers? Can it save my hand? I'll offer up prayers and sacrifices to Magoubliet. You know, I'll sacrifice a goat or whatever Magoubliet desires. You know, I'll burn incense. I'll you know, stand the night in vigil. And Aaron's like, oh, yes, you know, yes, Magoubliet, he can help you. Yes, give me the fingers. Yes, give them to me. And James gave him the fingers. And Aaron, being a goblin, you know, and a kender goblin at that, Aaron takes the fingers and he looks at them and he eats James's fingers, and he swallows him down. You know, James is just in shock. And then James, he pulled his spear and starts trying to kill Aaron, and Aaron starts screaming. You know, like, leave me alone, help me, someone help me. I don't know why this man's trying to attack me. All I did was eat 3 of his fingers. So they start brawling, and Josh is trying to break it up. You know, this poor gnome that Josh is playing is trying to break it up. Eventually he does so, and you know, James acknowledged that the only reason he didn't kill Aaron in character is for metagaming reasons, because he didn't want to, you know, end the game there or end Aaron's enjoyment of the game there out of character. In character, he really should have killed him, but this is good metagaming. This is the kind of metagaming that allows everyone to have more fun instead of less fun. Maybe James had a little bit less fun, because everyone would love to kill Aaron. But I digress. So they spent the night in a badger burrow. You know, James bandaged his hand up. Aaron is the only one who had a hot meal that night. eating James's fingers. But they came out of the badger burrow in the morning. They made their way through the forest, and they could see that the way the forest lay was there was the village and the castle. And the forest ran up against both of them, so they could move around to the let's say to the west and approach the castle directly from the forest, which would mean slogging through more forest, or giant-sized forest, or they could move through the giant-sized village full of giant-sized peasants and approach the castle that way, which presumably is where the elven princess is being held captive. They decided for the village route, which I was unhappy about because I was looking forward to the forest trek as a referee. But you got to give your players options, and you got to roll with the options that they select to pursue. So I went through the village. First, I got through the giant farmers' fields, and then they came up, I believe, to there was a little watchtower, I believe. I'm not exactly sure what I was watching for, but they did have a watchtower erected, and so they snuck past the guard there. They did a very good job being stealthy. You know, they were moving through from doorway to doorway, you know, like the vermin that they were, hiding behind sacks of grain and underneath wagons. I believe Aaron disguised himself as a giant child, if I recall correctly. Now remember, his character is totally insane, so his disguise was poor and poorly thought out. But they were still stealthy enough to make it through into the castle, and they proceeded through the castle. Let me see. I think Josh had been holding in reserve. He had been holding in reserve a charm spell. When they got to the castle gate, bam! He charmed the guard on the gate, and got the guard to put them into a sack. And Josh, and he had the sack slung over his shoulder, and Josh cut a little hole out and poked his head through. So he's poking his head out of the sack the guard is carrying, which is full of the other party members. You know, James and Aaron, you know, who just had a vicious fist fight with each other, are now in a sack together. I appreciate James not just attacking right there. Thank you, James, for that. But they got through. The guard managed to get them through the castle a little bit, and they came through. They spied a little bit. They listened at a doorway, and they heard the king and queen of the giants, these cloud giants, discussing their scheme, which was to marry the elven princess to their son, who's also a sky giant, so that he would have a claim to the throne of Teldrassil, so that the giants could take over Teldrassil peacefully and have another giantish kingdom. You know, the giants haven't ruled a true kingdom since the age of giants, you know, thousands of years ago. I think it's like 3,000 years ago. They have city-states like this one, but like this is their biggest settlement of giants in the whole world in this setting. So that was their plan: take over Teldrassil by marrying the princess who they kidnapped to their son. So the party heard this, you know, oh, the dastardly scheme, and they headed through to the son's bedchamber, because now they knew where to look for the princess, and they found the bedchamber. There's this kind of a dollhouse in a cage, and the princess is locked in there. And you know, the party came through. I think I'm not sure who broke into the cage. It's possible that the blacksmith missized it, so it's actually a little too big for the princess, and she just slipped through the bars. So I don't know if they even had to pick the lock, but they got the princess. You know, all they have to do is get her out now. But the guard snaps out of his charm. You know, he sees these tiny guys there rescuing the princess. He raises the alarm. You know, the prince rushes in. The guards start to rush forward, and just as it looks like they're about to get stomped and they're about to get crushed and captured, Josh says, "Everyone, give me your hands," and he holds out his hands. And he grabs hands with James and with the princess, you know, and Aaron kind of turns like, "What?" And Josh teleports. He teleports himself, James, and the princess out of Dodge, back to Hobbiton. Remember, this is a 10th level game. So he'd been holding, this is like his highest level spell. He'd been holding it in reserve the whole time. And he teleports them away. Aaron is left. Aaron is left in the giant sky city with the guards rushing in on him. They're just ready to stomp him. And, you know, James, out of character, like points at Aaron and he starts cracking up. He's like, "That's what you get for eating my fingers. That's what you get. That's what you deserve. You tender in the body of a goblin." Of course, Aaron was quick to point out maybe his character survived because he has an aura of madness, and that can cause some serious strangeness to go on. But that's the recap of our one-shot in Giantland with small-sized player characters. It was a lot of fun. You know, I think it was a 4-hour session, very action-packed. Had a pretty solid plot, solid role-playing this time, you know, from James, Josh, as always. You know, Aaron does role-play. He just plays the same character all the time, which is a Kender, which is not a very entertaining character to see role-played, but the entertainment value was very, very high. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you take back you know, again, the lessons of a one-shot, action, 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 and throw in a couple of branches, options, branching storylines. Approach the castle this way or approach the castle that way. I believe when the skyship was going down, they also had some ability to control where it landed. They decided the forest was safest, but they could have tried to land it on the castle, the village, or even the farmer's fields as well. So that was another option I forgot to mention. But create a mini sandbox and let them go in it. Push the pace. Make it super dangerous. Danger and action, they're the same thing. So I'm going to be signing off now. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Have a nice